Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Why Brands Work. You here with Will as usual. How's it going, Will?
What's up? Excited to jump into this one.
Yeah, today we are going to be covering Athletic Brewing, which, funnily enough, I've been consistently writing Athletic Greens when I've been doing research for this, just because we're doing two athletics back to back. But
Yes.
I guess we should be referring to it as AG1. But today we're going from the health powder into healthy beer. Almost is almost how you could categorize it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny you say that. I do the same thing that I'll say athletic greens, but then like it's athletic brewing, or I'll do vice versa. So
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, honestly, that's kind of an interesting place to start. Is the word athletic is very intentional here. The idea of like athletic greens is obviously it's built for athletes, it's people that care about their health. Similarly here, athletic brewing is built from that same, solving the founder's need of being able to have a drink that they can, beer, they like beer, they want to be able to keep drinking it, but feeling like it's not impacting their performance as in business, in life, being able to work out, things like that. And so there's a lot of parallels here that how mixing in habits or replacing habits with things that are just slightly healthier for you, which I think is really indicative of a overall kind of macro trend that we'll get into here in a little bit of like why this is working so well and what's going on and why this brand works. Um, so first off, let's start talking about it. Do you want to give us a quick intro on Athletic Brewing, what the brand is, what they're doing?
right. So athletic brewing is a non-alcoholic beer.
Hmm.
And protein a beer, and as some people call it. And they're really like not out in need. Like Heineken has Heineken Zero, but they also still have, all these other beers. Sam Adams has a non-alcoholic beer. They sell all these alcoholic beers. So their whole brand is centered around being non-alcoholic. And so yeah, so they, think about any beer that you would drink, like an IPA or Pilsner or something like that. You can get that in from in non-alcoholic form to athletic brews. And yeah, they are the market leader.
And actually first to market, even compared to Heineken Zero, Sam Adams Zero. I think there's now a Corona Zero and a Guinness Zero. All of those beers came after. It kind of seems like Athletic Brewing almost pioneered this market in a way. They're the market leader. Obviously there's been with it Odell's. I think Odell's have been around for forever.
Yeah, that's
You know, I
non-alcoholic.
think Bex is a non-alcoholic as well. But yeah, I think
Yeah,
one of the things that you really hit on there that's super important about this product is that, Odell's or, whatever. No, it's not Odell's, it's O'Doul's. O'Doul's.
visuals, okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
O'Doul's. They're just
yeah,
like a flavorless lager, and they have, this is something that the co-founder has talked about quite a bit, or the founder,
mhm,
um, is that previously, non-alcoholic beer was actually born out of the prohibition. It was a solution to still being able to serve up a drink, and have it be beer, but it's non-alcoholic. And the process for creating that was just burning off all the alcohol. So you would brew the beer and then just boil off the alcohol, which also boils off the flavor. And so,
right.
for someone that likes IPA or, even like a hazy IPA or a porter or something like that, that was never an option for non-alcoholic beer until Athletic Brewing came around, and actually did a lot of intent research and R&D into being able to create beer flavors without the alcohol. It's a totally different process of very, very fine tuning, very refined process of exactly the right temperature to maintain the quality of the hops and all this kind of stuff. And I think that was something really interesting that I learned about this, is just that the reason that non-alcoholic beer has been so flavorless for so long is that there really wasn't a process for making flavorful non-alcoholic beer until Athletic Brewing came up with it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, were they actually the first ones? I never knew that. I knew they were like the category leader by far, but I didn't know they were like actually the ones that did it first. I mean, like you said, duels been around Vex, and that they were good. They were sort of like wearing off the alcohol, but I did not know that.
Yeah, I think that they really kind of pioneered the NA movement here around beer,
Hmm.
specifically craft beer. That's really what it comes down to. They pioneered
Yeah.
NA craft beer. So that's something just what I mean, just real fast. His name is Bill Shufelt. Let's stop talking about him
Yeah.
as the founder or whatever. Bill is a self-proclaimed love food, love drinks, and he worked at a hedge fund actually.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
and so very high demand job. It's Steve Cohen's hedge fund, which have you heard of them? Do you know who Steve Cohen
Yeah.
is?
Yeah. 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 Steve Pontius device. I can't
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to look him up. To be honest, I was not sure who he was, but I also found out in my research, apparently the show Billions, have you seen that show at all? It's
Yeah.
about a hedge fund.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's like the Yellowstone of hedge fund or like the Game of
yeah.
Thrones for hedge fund people.
Yeah.
Apparently Billions is based off of this hedge fund.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's like the rumor. And so he worked at this incredibly high octane, crazy level. Everybody in the room is the smartest person from the best school, and they all work at this insane hedge fund, right? Um, and in New York, half of the job is being there at 6 a.m. and then working until 5 p.m. But the second half of the job is then being out from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. every night, going out with clients, drinking, talking to people. There's a big social element to it, and you just can't survive without having like a drink in your hand all the time. And so that's really what kind of spurred this on for Bill, is that he wanted to be able to have, there were no good options out there. You can't go and there was nothing that you could drink that felt like you were still enjoying yourself and was actually a pleasure to drink. It's just you're going out there and, either opting out, which is kind of like a social faux pas in a way. When you're out there, you feel weird about it. We talked about this with liquid death before, where, drinking water out of a liquid death can feels like you're drinking at an event instead of, it's like almost a beer replacement. And so
Yeah.
I thought that was super, again, we see this over and over again. The best brands are always driven by people that have a direct need for it and can kind of scratch their own itch, solve their own problem.
Yeah. Yeah. That is like a team talk about that playbook spectrum and solving problem. And that is true with this brand for sure. You know, the founder was in a very, yeah, you touched on it, on a very demanding position, demanding job where, yeah, alcohol can really impact your sleep schedule and stuff like that, your performance. And, yeah, so you definitely scratches his own niche on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and arguably at the perfect time, because we're talking about if they're the market leader. I think he started working on this idea in like 2014.
Yeah.
It's almost a decade ago, before the Andrew Huberman podcast that everyone has listened to about like how bad alcohol is for you, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Back then, it was like alcohol was still, I mean, alcohol still is, a big part of people's lives, but there was this whole movement, if you remember, like even within the biohacking community, where this is kind of the
mhm.
case and too, where it was like, oh, drink 2 glasses of wine. I don't know if you remember Sit there talking about
Oh
that.
yeah, and the 4 hour body, 100%.
I was
Yep.
like a thing, like I drink wine now, and people were doing that. But then it was, yeah, this was pretty Dr. Peter Attia and Adrian
Hmm.
the whole sort of anti-alcohol trend we're on right now.
Yep. Yep. Which we've seen a ton of this pop up. There's so many NA cocktail brands and things like that now too,
Yeah,
like non-alcoholic spirits. Then there's also a big uptick in the amount of, CBD kind of replacement or like
yeah,
adaptogen drinks and things. Um, and the market is just drinking this up. Gen Z apparently has like the lowest level of drinking, alcohol consumption
yeah,
across the board of like, penetration in the market. Um, and it's obviously it's a great place for us to be moving towards at the end of the day, because
yeah,
alcohol is terrible for us. But at the end of the day, you and I have had beers together. We enjoy it. It's fun to go out and have a couple drinks and whatnot. But the thing is it really is terrible for you, and it's nice to have some alternatives. Which brings me to one more point on this, is that he's apparently 80% of Athletic Brewing's customers still consume alcohol.
Oh, I did not know that. I could see that. Like it's
Yeah,
like a new behavior almost. Um,
exactly.
where like because I've noticed this too. Like I was this is funny. I went on like a hiking trip a few weeks ago, and we went to Chipotle afterwards, and there was all these bikers there, like not like
Mhm.
boat bikers, and they got
Right. Yeah.
Chipotle, and then they brought in a 6 pack of Athletic Brew, and we're just sitting there drinking.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, because it's the one, I've been thinking about it because we're
Yeah.
recording this right now, end of June.
Mm-hmm.
Next week is 4th of July. We're flying back to the East Coast to hang out with the family. We're going to go to the beach together, and that's always typically a drinking situation, right?
Yeah.
Can have beers on the beach and play cornhole and hang out, right? But
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it now as, because you couldn't order it to Georgia, so you sent it to me
Yeah.
for when we bought it for the podcast, and it's amazing. It's so good. I had it before, but I drank like I've been kind of limiting myself. I'm like, I want to keep some of these. I even made bratwurst with it last week. Like I beer boiled the brats in it to kind of try
Oh
that
wow.
too.
There's a whole
Starting great.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so, but with this and having it, it made me realize, oh, this is such a good replacement behavior. I can go to the beach, and that doesn't mean I'm not going to drink at the beach, when we're there for the 4th of July, but, maybe switch off back and forth, have a beer and then have an athletic brew, and then go back to an alcoholic beer and then have an athletic brew, because it creates a habit where I feel a little bit healthier. I'm going to feel a little bit better the next day. Maybe, the day will feel a little bit longer because you don't get into that haze of where you've just had too many beers. And so it's a really interesting way to kind of work through the drinking culture that we live in, because it's so hard to socialize sometimes, or so hard to be in those social situations without like having a drink in your hand.
Yeah. So it's like it's good for pacing. This isn't a mid behavior yet. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
no,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah, it really does. I mean, like this trend, this macro trend is so crazy. I didn't really know about it until we started looking at it. I mean, I heard of Heineken Zero and Athletic Brewing. I had trying it, and I don't really drink that much myself. I hardly ever drink, so I was somewhat not maybe necessarily adopting it, but it wasn't until we did Live with Death where I realized this whole crazy subculture within. Not, I'm not even talking about people that are drinking non-alcoholic beers. I'm talking about subculture of brands popping up. They're non-alcoholic. I started connecting with all these different people on LinkedIn. It's not just beer companies. It's a lot of like gin,
Mhm.
replacements, rum, whiskey, all sorts of like elixirs. Like this whole scene. There was one guy that started this whole new store that was like he's trying to be like the Amazon of alcohol. It's wild. It is a very, very fast growing trend.
Yeah, yeah, I think there's just a lot more consciousness around the health
Yeah.
implications of alcohol. But we see that it looks macro to us. It's still only, I think, 1.5% of beer consumed in the
Yeah.
US is non-alcoholic beer, though. So it's a very small group that has adopted it so far.
Mhm.
But I think that as more and more Gen Z, or Gen Z kind of develops, and that moves forward, and even Gen Alpha gets to drinking age, I think that's we're going to see an even higher uptick in adoption of this.
Yeah.
But yeah, the market is expanding so quickly, and I think it just comes back to that there's I wouldn't consider myself a heavy drinker. I would say I'm a regular drinker, though. I love going out to dinner. I love to have like a beer. That's a go-to for me. Um, but it's more the ritual about it. I want to go and sit down and just have kind of that placebo effect almost, of just having something in your hand. You're sitting down. It's a little different than just like having water with your meal, because I don't really drink soda. And so, switching to that, it's like, okay, well, this is the treat that I'm going to have with my meal. And so just being able to I'd love to be able to have a draft athletic brew option where I can
Mhm.
still kind of get that feeling of having a drink, but I'm not, the alcohol. It's not about the alcohol for me. I think the relaxing thing is the ritual. It's the like sitting down, having something, the taste of the flavor is a little bit different, and it feels just like, hey, it's the weekend, or it's the end of the day and I'm winding down. And I think that's why so many of these I think the best word is like the elixirs, because that's how they kind of brand themselves all the time with these botanicals and adaptogens and all this stuff or whatever to kind of make you feel good or heighten your feelings. Or even some of them going as far as having THC in them is such an interesting development in the market.
Yeah, it's crazy times. Probably one of the. I mean, I think you're right. Like we're like really on top of like the early adopters, and we're just assuming this is a macro trend, but it's a micro trend, I guess. Technically, if you zoom out, but it is probably one of the faster ones I've seen.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Seen.
definitely. Okay, so we've kind of been waffling back and forth between like the product itself and the team. Is there anything else, like, that you want to say specifically about the product and, the flavors or anything that you see right now that you feel like is a standout kind of reason that this product specifically works?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like, I do like as someone who's always been like, at least in the past 10 years, like I'll drink and then I wouldn't. So I'd like waffle back and forth. Lately, now, like for the past 2 years, I haven't really been drinking. Um, but it always felt like something was missing. But now that I can get these non-alcoholic beers, like a Heineken Zero, or I'll bring like a 6 pack of Athletic Brew. I brought that to a party a few weeks ago. Um, and it's like totally replaced it for me. It's like now, kind of like what you're talking about, that placebo. It's not even about the alcohol itself. It's just like me personally, some people don't like beer. I actually do like the taste of like an IPA or something like that. And it's not like 100%, but it is like it checks the box, where I can get my the IPA with the meal, and it's like I feel good, and I don't get that alcohol feeling afterwards. Which if you've ever worked with it for a long time and you come back to it, like you'll notice it. You'll just there's like this. Like because I get kind of red sometimes now if I just have a beer, and then obviously it affects my sleep too. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
and they'll also cause other weird things to trigger, like, oh, like now I want that dessert, or now let's have another beer. And it's like it kind of avoids all those vices to get triggered after you had a beer or two. You still get the upside enjoying it. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. No, it's a huge. I think the market is right for it in terms of the product itself. And then for me, as we kind of mentioned already, it's the innovation on the space in terms of like,
Yeah.
something that the founder said in one of the podcasts I listened to was that it had not been innovated on since Prohibition.
Yeah.
Nobody had thought about making beer in a way that made non-alcoholic beer great. Um, And so there's just a period of time that the only option was a duels, and it was stigmatized, and Budweiser and Coors, they had no interest in kind of developing NA beers or pushing that or anything like that because, their most of their market is people who consume alcohol already. And it's losing that stigma of, oh, it's somebody in recovery. They're like kind of
Yeah.
they're drinking non-alcoholic beer because they still have the habit, but they can't have alcohol or anything like that. It's just becoming more of a lifestyle choice. Uh, cool. Well, let's talk about. So we've already touched on Bill a little bit. We touched on his background. He's in finance, and one day at dinner, apparently his wife just said, "Hey, I think that you should run with this. I think you should really tackle this." And he quit his job. He kind of had it rolling in the background already, um, but he just quit his job at the hedge fund and went full in on this and just started researching, all the brewing techniques and things like that, and just looking for a master brewer, somebody that could come in and help him actually, co-found this and work because he didn't have a product yet. He just had the idea. He had kind of the learnings, the trends that he's already seen from working in finance. I think that's another big portion of it is that while he's scratching his own itch, he also is very good at analyzing ideas and analyzing companies. That's what he did for a living. So being able to look at market trends and say, hey, there's potential here, I think probably also spurred him and gave him and his wife kind of the confidence of him to quit this. That's a career made job. You can be at that hedge fund and, retire in your 60s with millions and millions and millions of dollars. So what does it take to kind of jump off and do something else? And something he mentioned is that he wanted to do something that was interesting and also something that would help other people, because he sees athletic brewing as a way to affect many people's lives and like bring more positive into the world. Um, and so, like I said, he was on this journey to find another co-founder, someone to work with on this, and um, he was apparently going into pitches saying, "Listen, don't hang up yet, but I want to make non-alcoholic beer." And he
Yeah.
was just getting totally shut down by people left and right because nobody really wanted to focus on this, until he found his co-founder. His name is John Walker, I believe, was
Yeah.
the second.
He's like an award-winning. I'm not sure I forget the word here.
Yes.
Yeah, and he honestly came from like a very big background in brewing, like award-winning craft brews. Um,
And
and, and yeah, I mean, I think you summed it up like when I heard like he was calling around all these people, and I think he rejected a lot. And I think he took him a long time to find that co-founder. Um, they really found a way at that because it makes the quality of the beer, and you can tell that like they put a lot into it. I think that's where he sucked in where it took him like 30 times to do it first batch, right? Yeah, pretty right.
hmm
So yeah, it's like again a very good co-founding team. You get someone that really
right.
understands the product, and then you get someone who really understands, the market. Um, Not only that, but just like the background coming from a hedge fund. And I think we'll talk about it a little bit more. Like the level of a performer you need to be to work there, and just tactically, this company does things very, very well. I've seen athletic brewing do it like they just execute very, very well. And I would imagine like that comes from just years working on Wall Street, working in those
hmm
high end positions, working with some very talented and smart people. And you can see that kind of in the execution of the brand.
Yeah. Yeah. Being a great operator solves most things at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Good
and
idea,
yeah, it
good
is.
product.
Yeah, they're got great operation. That's a good way to put it. Just like operationally, they're very sound.
Yeah, I think now they have like three different breweries, like locations, or they have two, and they're building the third, or three, and they're building the fourth. The first one they built during COVID, and all of that out of necessity, actually, because nobody would brew for them.
Hmm.
They were having a hard time finding like a co-packer, a co-manufacturer to actually brew their beer for them. Um, and so they went out and had to just build their own. And that's a lot of what they put their seed money and their investment into, is actually building their own breweries. Um, One other kind of interesting thing about because we talk about, oh, their skill sets are really, work well together, and oh, they're, this person does this and this person does that, and they like kind of co-found a relationship. But I think even more importantly, and you and I know this quite well because we knew each other before, kind of as friends from Vietnam, and so we had a very culturally similar background in terms of what our values are around, like having a remote company and prioritizing that kind of like work-life balance for us and our team and that kind of thing, right? Um, Apparently, they're both from Connecticut. And so even though John, who was the brewer, was in Santa Fe or New Mexico, it was actually an opportunity for John to be able to move back to Connecticut because he had just started a family and have his kids be like near their family. So that's, it's just like those kind of little luck serendipitous things are also so incredibly important in like in a co-founder relationship because of how much, he's like, oh, we had never met each other. And then we bought a warehouse and we're working together 8 hours a day doing hundreds of tests on like beer cultures, and so you have to kind of have those little like, and then, oh, and we found out, by the way, we have kind of complementary skill sets that we didn't really look for initially. It was just like, okay, this is the relationship started and now we're going to do it. And so that's another kind of little thing that I think really can sometimes make or break a business, like if think about it, if you and I had a different relationship where we didn't feel like we could work as well together as we do, Flow Candy would have been done 2 or 3 years ago, you know? And so you kind of get lucky or you don't with some of those things. And this is definitely one of those situations where they had some cultural relevance, and maybe there's a benefit of John getting to move back to the East Coast. That I think is kind of sometimes people overlook in like what makes a brand work.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. That I didn't realize that in my research. You know, I did think that at the time. It's like, man, like you have a guy funding from a hedge fund that is, again, we talk about it, like he on Wall Street is demanding, right? Hedge funds, you know, I don't know if you know much about, I know a little bit about it. So you started investment bank and you officially worked your way, but you still like start out working for a hedge fund. You know, some experience. And then you work at this one hedge fund that's notorious, you know, the shield billions is made off of apparently. And you know, it's like that culture is crazy. And then the beer culture, you know, is, you know, there's some pros and negatives to it. But I believing that, you know, from a co-founder perspective from Wall Street, it's interesting that they were able to try that.
Yeah, yeah, no, I totally agree. And maybe it's the cultural relevance of kind of being from the same area, kind of
Yeah,
seeing the vision, understanding the vision. You know, there could be a lot of that in there. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, it's very much a classic story of gotta have the right, have the right drive to solve this problem, preferably for yourself.
yeah.
When it comes to brands that work for founders, it's just that. We've seen it over and over and over again. Um, this is just one of those that happens to be, and then having the right co-founder partner, finding somebody that you work well with together, and then third, what you mentioned is like there's got to be, he's dialed in if he was able to get himself to a career at Steve Cohen's hedge fund. And so he's obviously an incredible operator. And he's mentioned in other podcasts and stuff that he's on the grind, but he loves the grind too. He's a family oriented guy where he'll spend a few hours in the morning with his kids. They go off to school. He works for X amount of time, spends a few hours with them again, and then he works again. He does like 2 work days per day, basically. And so obviously he's pinpoint dialed in on the operations side that's what you need to run, a huge company like this.
I know.
Cool. Well, let's pivot over to the marketing stuff and start talking about, how because this was a great idea. They started putting stuff together, but a lot of ideas just stay at that phase. You might even get a product together. I'm sure we have many listeners and brand owners we know and stuff like that kind of feel that they're in that stage where they have a great idea and they have a really good product, but their problem is just getting into the hands of the people that are going to be their customers or their advocates. So why don't you start? What's kind of standing out for you around Athletic Brewing and their marketing and how they actually started to get Athletic into customers' hands?
Yeah, I mean, I think what recently stands out is this category is exploded right now. I think I saw it grew like 32% in 2023. Um, and so that's like really, really interesting. So you need to talk about this before, like the high tide raises all those. I playing much earlier where it's like part of their success is just this category. Um, Part of Liquid Death's success. I mean, Liquid Death crosses over a couple of different categories, but part of their success was this too. Um, so that sticks out to me from the marketing perspective. Another thing that sticks out to me is and this goes back to how they initially launched. You know, I think that they initially, you know, they're omni-channel, multi-channel brand, and they, um, originally, I think it got distribution at Whole Foods a little bit, and now it's a total, like, because you could go into Whole Foods and if you're local, just back in the day, they probably still do this, but, you know, they would allow local vendors to sort of, merchandise their brand or sample their brand. So I think they initially probably got some distribution in the Connecticut area. I was doing from Whole Foods. The general, they are the number one selling beer of any kind. alcoholic or non-alcoholic in Whole Foods.
Hmm.
So it's very also related into their sort of target market, a little bit higher end, a little bit more like athletes, people who care more about their body, and and see on that, like they just do distribution, um, so they're very very distributed nationwide. Um, to talk about the industry store too, the marketing there, I think the one thing that really sticks out to me is such as how like deep for distribution is.
Yeah, I mean, Whole Foods is a great first step for that. And
Yeah.
from one of the stories I've heard or read, apparently, it ties in with a lot of their early kind of marketing strategy, if you will, which was Bill waking up at 2 in the morning and driving 6 hours to be at a marathon or a
Yeah.
triathlon or an Ironman competition or whatever, and just being at the finish line, handing out athletic brews, trying to get people to try it, trying to, not leading with this is non-alcoholic beer, but just like having people try it and then being like, this is non-alcoholic, and then being like, what, oh, wait, what? Like, oh, I could have this like on a work lunch and not have that afternoon slump, or oh, I could have this, um, any night of the week, even if I'm not trying to, drink that day or whatever. And so that actually played into the story he told about Whole Foods, was that he did the same tactic. He actually just went
Yeah.
and befriended the manager at Whole Foods or some of the employees and got them to try it. And they started advocating for Athletic Brewing and got him in connection with like the regional manager of Whole Foods, which then kind of springboarded them into being able to get into the store. And then obviously, I think retail has a very you get one and then you can get everyone type feeling, where if you have a big name like Whole Foods, it makes it a lot, not you can just automatically, but it makes it a lot easier to get that other distribution when you can say, hey, these other people are carrying us already. And so I think that's probably where he kind of springboarded into being able to get that huge distribution that you're talking about.
Yeah. One thing about the passing out the beers at the events, one thing they do well too in their marketing is, have you seen this community hub that they do? They have.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So they like, I know you hear a lot about community. Community is like the fastest growing, or this is like some trending topics that you'll hear a lot in the GSC e-commerce and then I help you build your community or something like that. But no one really does it that well. No service providers do it, or agencies of us. Like, how can you, as an agency, can you even like help grow a community? But I will say, what Athletic Brewing's community hub or community page on their website is really, really good. They basically been able to leverage what Bill was doing, and now it's like they have events like every day. They're whether it's like
Yeah.
triathlon or races or stuff, and they're just like really building a community there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's huge. I think just they're really able to tap into something that is becoming really important to a certain subsect of the market. And, being able to couple that with a great product is always going to be a great playbook and a successful playbook. Um,
Mhm.
even let's say the community to another level, they are also taking a page out of what I think we've kind of been calling the Terrence Riley playbook, the Stanley, now CEO, former Crocs CMO, of find your organic influencers.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so this is another thing that they're going out, and they even have a beer that is named after Walker Hayes. It's like the Walker Hazy IPA. And Walker Hayes, I don't know if you're familiar. He's a country singer. I didn't know who he was. Not gonna lie, I didn't know who Walker Hayes was, but apparently he was already drinking Athletic Brew. They saw that, they reached out to him, they collaborated. This exact
JJ Watt, I think.
JJ Watt. Yep,
Yeah.
JJ Watt is another one as well. And then actually one of our former customers, um, David Shea.
So David Shane. I saw that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're again a very organic adoption of it, where they they sit down with David Chang to talk about, because all of the Momofuku restaurants and um, carry Athletic Brew
Yeah.
as a drink option. And so they're able to, the how that all came along is they're sitting down, they have a discussion, and it was after like the first sip that David Chang was just like bought it. He drank. He's like, this is actually good. I've never not liked non-alcoholic beer because of it not having alcohol. I didn't like it because it didn't taste good. And
Yeah.
so being a chef, being endorsed by a celebrity chef, and then them becoming an investor is even bigger of that. Find your audience and your distribution where it already exists of people that love it for the reason that you're trying to connect with your audience to begin with, because those are your customers. And if your customers have a platform, it can have so much easier of a time to actually genuinely tap into that market.
Yeah. I know. And yeah, it's similar to where, yeah, they like sell the influencer first almost the entire time. I think we talked about that. But that was like a cringe. And yeah, and that's like what and they noticed somebody already using I think that's a prop. That's like one of the misnomers about influencer marketing is that oh I had to go out and be all these influencers. But what we're seeing is a lot of these big brands is they find influencers that are already using their products. They're already bought it. Whether that's Terrence Riley with Crocs, I'm noticing Post Malone, or whether it's what story you just told about athletic greens. I said athletic grain or athletic greens. It's
Yeah.
I just
Tim Ferriss. Yeah, Tim
yeah
Ferriss or
yeah
Andrew Huberman.
yeah yeah
Or eventually with Y Brand's work and me with Celsius, they're gonna be
yeah
like, oh, we need to get Brian, because he's always
yeah
drinking the Celsius on the podcast. So
yeah exactly.
yeah. Um, but no, it's such a good playbook, and it brings me to the question. I'm like, okay, business idea. How do we go out there and find, influencers and what products they're already using? How do you
Yeah.
jump into these lives and tap into exactly like, okay, this person is using this person is using this, and then kind of make those connections. Uh, yeah, I don't know. That's a super viable business idea, but if somebody wants to run with it, go for it. Um, but that's it's such a proven thing right now, and that's really where we're seeing all of the every bit of explosive growth right now is kind of coming through those channels. uh I don't know if you saw today, Liquid Death released an Ozzy Osbourne commercial for their new powders.
uh,
Yeah, where it's like it's not drugs, it's a drink powder, and it because it's Ozzy Osbourne is saying don't snort it, like don't try to freebase it, just powder. And it's such a perfect brand fit that I'm sure Ozzy Osbourne was already into Liquid Death, or they had a very easy time in connecting with them because the brands are so aligned already. um and so, yeah, I think that that's a huge thing. And then one other marketing thing I want to touch on before we jump over to our top threes is they had a huge distinct advantage in digital marketing, because being a non-alcoholic beverage means that they can traditionally advertise. There's
yeah
a lot less restrictions, than because you can't be a beer brand or whatever and just like do Facebook ads. It's like not there's a very specific targeting that you're allowed to do, and it's very, very limited in what their options are. Alcohol, THC, CBD, like all of these kind of no words. Um, they weren't restricted by any of that. So they could run all of this guerrilla marketing that they're doing, but also run the traditional ad playbook where they're, finding audiences on Instagram, converting them through ads. I don't know about you, but I'm getting Athletic Brew ads 24/7 now. I'm just like
yeah
constantly getting Athletic Brew ads. Um,
through time
yeah, yeah,
so yeah,
exactly.
they can do it because they're not an alcoholic. And I don't know if you saw this too. They have an app that they use. I'm not sure how much this drives growth per se, but it's in within that trend. It's like a app, like an iPhone app that tracks um like how many days you'll try um
Hmm.
not drinking.
Yeah,
And like if you're saying that to your otherwise
yeah,
you can't do that. Can't do
right,
that.
right.
Because they're leading with non-alcoholic. You're right. It unlocks all these different things, like a whole blue ocean.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. Cool. Well, let's jump into top threes for what you think the biggest reasons are that this brand works. And we'll close it
Yeah.
out from here. So why don't you go first?
I'll let you go first. You go first. I feel like I always do. I'll go first. I'm not like, I don't
Yeah,
want to give your ideas. So yeah.
yeah, okay. It's my turn to go first. Cool.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, it is the product innovation, like tasty non-alcoholic beer. The fact that I can go grab a New England IPA, and it's non-alcoholic is so different from me trying to, even if it's just like a Heineken Zero or a Corona Zero or whatever, I prefer hazy IPAs and those kind of things, something with a little bit more flavor. And so being able to drink that in a non-alcoholic format and them having so many different, styles and flavors and things like that is, I think, one of the reasons that they're finding so much success because it's not just Sam Adams drinkers or Heineken drinkers that now have like an option for non-alcoholic. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think the second is definitely going to be for me the influencer playbook, this Terrence Riley playbook that we keep talking about. That if this to me is just becoming the overarching unlock for growth as we do more and more of these is being able to, whether it's through unfair advantages, if you're Kim Kardashian, have a ton of celebrities in your contacts that you can just text, or if you are really, you really have your finger on the pulse of the market and can identify people that are already using your product that have a massive audience. That is the key to explosive growth right now, because being able to borrow reputation or borrow fame and use that somebody else's audience to propel your growth is just second to none, and being able to actually create attention around your product. Um, and then lastly, I think I will probably go with, I think a lot of it comes down to just how driven around this problem Bill is, how much he's kind of scratching his own itch, and then had, just the ability to tackle it, the operations and tactical ability to move this from this is me scratching my own itch to actually operating how much are they worth now?
It's $500 million. That's something
Yeah,
value that. So
yeah. So to be able to go from idea to actually operating a $500 million company, um, to me, there's a different person for a startup. There's a different person to run a startup. There's a different person to run a 10 to $50 million company. There's a different person to run a $200 million company, and there's a different person to run a $500 million company. But apparently, he's the right guy to go from idea all the way to 500 million, and that's a very unique, very huge advantage that he's that smart, that good, that capable, that much of an operator. So,
yeah.
for my three.
Yeah, yeah, I mean that to me was stuck out. Operational excellence. Did you coin that? Or tactical excellence. It's just like, and I saw this menu, the final breakdown. They leaving no stone unturned. Like I'll go look at Skims or Liquid Death or Athletic Greens is pretty well run, but it's there's a lot of like still low hanging fruit sometimes with those brands. Like these guys have everything dialed in. Um, Even like their, I'll give you an example. Is like I'll often look at like their transaction emails, some of them, the order receipts, stuff like that. And you can always tell like who's dialed in on how well thought out their transactional emails are. And Athletic Brewings are so dialed in, and that's just true of every single channel, every single touch point, every channel is really well thought out.
Mhm.
I would say so the operational excellence. I'd say another thing is sort of the brick and mortar distribution. I think is really dialed into. For example, like 67% of their traffic goes to their what is it? That actual page called the where to find us.
Mhm.
Actually not their own page. So a lot of people are just landing on their like where can I go um and buy in a retail store. And
Yeah.
that is probably, I've seen that in other brands too. That's probably intentional. And they are probably driving a lot of traffic to their retail partners too. And that creates probably a flywheel to some extent. And that probably just keeps their revenue high. I bet that they're I would say if I was by to guess, that channel is probably the leading channel for them. Um,
Listen,
you saw that when you looked at Black Rifle and I looked at their investor relations document, like their retail distribution channel was their highest percentage of sales. Um,
yeah,
so I thought that these guys were one of the most dialed in I've ever seen. And um, so those are two. And then I think the third one is just the ability to shift a category. Like we've done it to all of these brands where like Liquid Death we brought up. Jolie the Shower was one where they
yeah,
sort of took the beauty industry and brought it into like her shit would sort of be um the shower head market, like their keyword gets more try like Julie showerhead, it's not try the actual keyword showerhead. And I see I'm getting similar vibes here with Athletic Brewing. My brand, how can we find these crazy stats? Like they're the number one selling beer in Whole Foods, whether it's Nile or wow. Or the stat that you shared about how what was it around with 80% of their target market still drinks alcohol.
hmm
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's like this X factor of like totally being out in front of this new sort of shaping of the category. It really needs to top on my spread. I think that's
no,
gonna
it's
yeah,
huge.
that's where you get these like monumental valuations.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're able to attach your product to a cultural shift that's going on,
Yeah.
or a new problem or a new, something that is top of mind for people, you're always going to end up winning there. Especially if you're the first mover, like Athletic Brewing is, or you're the innovator in the category as well. Um, so yeah, I think it's huge. Uh, and they're an incredible brand, incredible beer. Probably going to jump off of this call and order some for the beach for next weekend. Have it shipped
Yeah.
straight to the house.
I'll go down to Whole Foods to get a 6 pack right now, man.
Yeah, pick some. Pick them up and meet us in New Jersey for a beach weekend next week, and we'll all hang out. But awesome. Well, thank you everybody who joined us today for the Athletic Brewing episode of Why Brands Work. As normal, we have a bunch of resources for you that you can download. The brand breakdown. I actually don't have any emails this time. I couldn't find any of their emails. That was very difficult. So maybe we'll try.
Yeah.
They're not on Mailed. They're not any. I checked a bunch of different sites to try and find them. So if you have a lead on the emails, let me know. I'd love to take a look at a big swipe file of them. And then obviously we run down their traffic. We run down all the apps and things that they're using, and the entire funnel that they have put together. So if you want to grab that, download it. It's on our page. Float Candy, Why Brands Work. Go to the Athletic Brewing page. And otherwise, is there anything else you want to shout out this week, Will?
Nope.
Cool. All right, everybody.
Thanks
Well,
for watching.
yep, absolutely. And we'll see you next time. Have a good one.
Bye.